What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another Detroit Lions video. I feel like I set myself up when I say we are back, and then it's a video that I haven't done before, that I'm like, I don't know what to say here. I don't know, because we're not back with that same video. But we're here to talk about the Lions, but a different video today. Today, we're going to be diving into the Lions' defensive side of the ball. And this felt like a necessary video to do at some point. I just needed to focus in on the Lions' defense. And this is going to be a nice little mix between talking about the San Fran game specifically, and also the Lions' defense as a whole as we head into the final stretch, meaning the last game of the season against the Vikings that Dan Campbell made it clear this is not a playoff game, because it's not. We're in the playoffs regardless. But it is a big game against the Vikings at home, a chance at the 1 seed, and then also heading into the playoffs. Like, that's where all the questions stem from. And I did a show yesterday on Bleacher Report. You can check it out on my page over there under the events tab. Go to the Detroit Lions page and you'll probably find it, where we talked about the Lions' biggest weapon. And that was a focus on the offensive side of the ball. But all the questions reside typically for fans on the defensive side of the ball. And today, I wanted to try to address a lot of those questions. The way to do that would be looking at the Lions defense as a whole. What is working? What is not working? What needs to improve? And what are the reasons for optimism as we head into the playoffs? Because every team has issues. Every team has problems. And from a health perspective, it's kind of just like waiting for guys to get back. But we're definitely trending the right direction. We could see Monty at some point. Alex Anzalone is getting set to return, whether that's this week or for the beginning of the playoffs, which is going to be massive, getting Duracell back in the fold there. Today, I want to talk through the defense. I wanted to specifically talk about this San Fran game and really what went wrong in that game, and then what went right at the end. What did San Francisco do well that gave us some problems? Because as always, things like this can get too big. I saw an article today, and I don't remember who wrote this, but shout out to them. I didn't read through it, but I saw the headline, and it was maybe the Lions' injury concerns essentially were overblown. And I read that, and I was like, oh my goodness. Someone else said it. Are you kidding me? Been saying this for weeks. It's definitely overblown, but I saw that, and that's because Duracell's coming back, and you look at the roster, and you're like, actually, you know, the second level's in pretty good shape. The back end's not in too bad of a shape either. You put Brian Branch in the slot. You put Amik out wide, who's played fantastic. Terrion has been your starter all season long. It's just now there's no longer Carlton Davis, which really stinks. Your safety position's in a pretty good spot. You're like, you know what? It's actually not maybe that bad. And today I want to take all of that into account, but also tie it along with this San Fran game. That way we have specific examples to look at. So we're going to do two different things here. We're going to look at a page where I wrote down what works for the Lions defense, what's working right now, and what I think we can rely upon as we head into this final stretch, the playoff stretch of the season. And then the flip side of what must improve for the Lions, or where some of the issues stand for the Lions. Now, I won't be addressing everything here. Like, there's certain things I just didn't put in here because we know of. And third down defense is really good. The red zone defense is really good. But we talked about those things many times. I talked about those things. What's an issue? Lions pass rush just in general. It's not the same without Hutchinson or Lee McNeil. So we understand some of these things, and I don't want to just like talk about that over and over, but I want to make it more relevant to right now what's working and what needs to improve, what can we rely on, and what might be a little bit of an issue as we head into this final stretch. And I'll show plays against San Fran as some example. What was leading to some of these big plays that San Francisco had? And there was a few things that I took away when watching this back that I actually didn't hate the game plan. I just think some of the game plan backfired. I think San Francisco had a really good plan to kind of counter what we were attacking with, and I think they did a really nice job. You know, I use kind of a metaphor in our Bleacher Report stream to kind of talk about the defense as I feel like there's two ways to go about it defensively. There's the one way, which is like, hey, we're going to take away what you do best. You know, we're going to try to tie that hand behind your back, and I think we had that, especially when Patricia was here. I think that was the plan a lot of times, and that's usually the people like on Madden, you know, for example, like me, that drops into zone coverage. They like to drop like 9 guys into coverage, try to take everything away, find out what you do well, we'll adjust to it, we're going to try to take that away. Meanwhile, there's the other people that are like, hey, we're going to blitz, we're going to play cover 0 all game long, and you have to show that you can have an answer for this, and if you don't, things are going to get ugly. And I feel like the Lions are a little bit more of the latter. They're a little bit more of that team that's like, hey, we're going to dictate everything defensively, right? We're going to dictate it, and you have to prove you have an answer for it. And I think the Lions, to dictate in this game, were like, hey, we're going to be aggressive as heck, and that's Aaron Glenn's tendency is to do that. And it wasn't just aggressive in the sense of like, oh, it's all man coverage, it's all cover 1, it's all blitz. Like, it wasn't that. It was they are incredibly aggressive at the second level. Their linebackers were flying downhill. There was an aggressiveness to we are stopping the run. You're not going to beat us in the ground game. And our defensive backs are going to play aggressive. The safety depth is going to be aggressive. And these are all things that we talked about in the preview that I was here for. I like the blitzing on early downs. Sometimes became a problem. But I was here for all of that. Like, that's what I wanted to do. So in fairness to the Lions, I can't then come back and be like, well, I hated what you guys did. I actually liked a lot of things that they did in theory. I just think San Fran came out and they had a really good plan for it. The Lions had to adjust, and they found adjustment in the second half. And just like the title of our initial reactions video, they found a way. Start start off with this first play here, and I think it's a great example of it. This is what San Fran was doing so well. One thing we talked about in the preview was that Deebo Samuel at running back, I said expect him to get the ball. If he's at running back, he's probably getting the football. So for me, when I see that, if I'm the defense and I see Deebo at back, I'm immediately thinking, okay, let's go be aggressive. Let's take that guy away. So that approach to me isn't a bad approach, but San Fran used Deebo a lot more times, more dangerously as a decoy than actually getting the ball when he was at running back. And that became the problem for us. So this first play here, Lions are going cover 3. They essentially buzz down their safety here with Brian Branch. You have the flat working out in your backer on this play, and you can see the aggressiveness of faking it to the back, just having Deebo working out of the backfield, just swinging out of the backfield, and they fake a screen on one side, and everybody flows that direction. You just settle down a player over the middle of the field and kind of an overball route against zone coverage, and there's nobody there. I will point the positive to this is Ife Melifonwu on the backside as the backside zone defender to kind of settle in and take away the slant on the backside was good because we saw Pittman later in a similar coverage that did not do that at all. So this is good awareness by Ife, but this is just an example of, hey, you're trying to take away that guy. Everybody's focused on Deebo, and they used him as a decoy perfectly to open up a chunk defensively. And the Lions kind of stayed with this approach for a lot of the game. Now, like I said, we're going to bounce around between good and bad. So let's go over to what works for the Lions. Let's talk about this defensive line, because after losing Ali McNeil, we had been without Hutchinson for a while, and I still continue to like the way that Za'Darius is playing. I don't think he's great against the run and some of his take on. I think he's solid against the run, but for me, it's pass rush, and he continues to show ways that he can win. It's just against San Fran, the ball is getting out really fast. They were getting out of the pocket. There wasn't a lot of opportunities to get pure pressure in this game. We also didn't put him in a lot of negative situations, so that kind of played into their hands. But I think that he still shows that he can get pass rush. But the focus for me on the defensive line was more about the Ali McNeil injury because of when that happened and just where we were. It was like, oh, we may not have a backup nose tackle. How is that going to look? That was the concern for me. And I think right now when you talk about what works, there's a real positive here. Number one, Levi Onwuzurike is a positive right now. He is really going the right direction. This season, he has 36 pressures. He had 2 in this last game. He had multiple wins in this game as the pressure piece. And I think that he's doing a lot of good against the run. I think at the end, it actually becomes more inconsistent, which is where the Lions came into the year playing him. But to add to that, I think Pat O'Connor is going to allow a lot of flexibility for Levi because Pat O'Connor, who in this last game played 32 snaps, that played a really good game, that has proved he can play inside and outside, his ability to play successfully at defensive end where he's a little bit more built to play, that's just kind of his body type, to me will open up flexibility for Levi to consistently play on the inside where he actually played 15 snaps against San Fran versus 13 at defensive end. To me, when you combine those two things together of Pat O'Connor, who continues to play well, and at this point, it's not just like a, oh, well, it's just a story, and there's so many injuries he has to play. Somebody's got to be out there, and maybe he'll make a good play one time. He jumps off the ball pretty well. No, Pat O'Connor's actually playing really good football, and he played really well in this game, and I think especially at defensive end, it can highlight his strengths, especially against the run, and I think this last game really highlighted what he's capable of, and when you have that, when you have a guy that's come on like that, then he's earning those snaps, Levi, to me, be the beneficiary of that, because it allows him to play inside more, and to me, that's where Levi's is most disruptive, and I think we're seeing that Levi, even though he's not elite, he is much more consistent. Obviously, this is his most consistent year, and without Aleem, this is his opportunity. Final year of your deal, it's like, dude, it's your chance to take off, and at some point, you need to, and while I don't think we've seen that game yet, I do think Levi is clearly playing at his most consistent level. He's playing at his best, and I thought he played pretty well against San Fran. Not perfect, but I thought he played pretty well. He's handling combo blocks more consistently. He's getting pressure. He's finding ways to win on the inside, and I think when you talk about what's working, because a big concern with the D-line is there's really not a lot of reinforcements coming. You kind of just are where you are. You got Miles Adams, you got Jonah Williams, you picked up some guys, just bringing for depth, but you kind of are where you are there. So it was, okay, which of these guys are actually going to step up? And to me, without Aleem, that was the concern. Who is going to step up? And we're going to continue to get good looks at that as we continue forward because Reeder, I don't think had his best game against Minnesota last time, so we need that. We need guys like Reeder to play really well. I thought Reeder played really well against San Fran, even though it's a beat-up O-line. It was a little bit difficult to kind of judge. I think what works right now for the Lions is that their defensive line, they're getting improvement and they're getting consistency out of some of these pieces. Pat O'Connor is adding consistency, and he's showing a lot of flexibility. Levi is adding consistency. Week in, week out, you kind of get a sense he's going to play pretty well. Last week at Chicago, he had like a 4-play stretch of that was pretty awesome. He had flashes again in this game. I think Levi's trending definitely the right direction, and DJ Reeder is playing the run, I think, kind of at his best clip so far this season. We'll see if that continues. It's a huge test next week, but I think that he's getting to that point where he's playing his best of the season. So to me, when I tie that together, no, this isn't an elite defensive line, and no, we can't replace Aleem or Aiden Hutchinson, but what works is that these two guys, these guys as a whole are trending the right direction. And you throw in then Chris Smith, who played 9 snaps, and I remember that was the conversation, why not Broderick, that kind of thing. It was like, hey, at this point, it's playoff time. And we're not looking for a guy to play 40 snaps at nose tackle. We're looking for someone that could take some snaps off of DJ Reader as just a rotational piece. And that's what it was. He played 9 snaps. He played pretty well. He's a little bit limited, but you know exactly what you're going to get. So consistency is key on the defensive line. I think right now what works is that while we're not elite there, we do have consistency. And I think this game kind of showed it. You look at this first run stop here with Levi, his ability to work back over the block to get the stop. Obviously, you throw Jack Campbell in this mix because of what he's done all season long against the run. Now, let's look at the next play here. And this is a play where they got us again. They got right behind us with George Kittle. And it goes right back to the fact of this was the aggressiveness the Lions approached this game with. And it backfired. But it's fair because I would have done the same thing. I had no issue watching this. Hey, you had to adjust, and they did ultimately. But like on a play like this, and these worked pretty well, Lions would go into like these cover 2 drops. Sometimes they'd probably cover 2 blitz out of it, just like they do here. They bring Jalen, Pascal gets pushed in, it kind of slows down the blitz. I loved coming in early down blitzing. I know we talked about that. I was like, hey, if you're going to play too high, which teams do, I like blitzing out of it. Don't sit back. They did. It backfired here. Hey, that happens, right? Can you adapt to it? And in a play like this with the pulling lineman, the aggressiveness from the backers, Jack Campbell steps down, they go right behind him with Kittle, and they pick up another chunk play. But they're still positive they're sprinkled in with the bad. And we do have to point those out. Like, for example, again, back to what works, Trevor Nowatzki. Now, Trevor Nowatzki did not have a great game, I would say, in this one. But I do think there are areas of his game that's getting better. And with Trevor, the concern, well, the big thing for me was he had to be able to play the run, right? Because now we're getting Pittman in the game. He played like 4 snaps. He rotated in for Trevor. Just didn't look great, but he did. So there's still that competition. I felt that should be a competition. But when Trevor's in the game, you see it on a play like this, his ability to take on the lead block on the play from a offensive lineman and kind of cause a mess. And it cuts it back inside, and it's a no gain. DJ Reader makes the stop. You see his ability against a rookie to reset, make the stop. These are things that you expect from a vet like that. But this was an improvement specifically, the take-on technique for Trevor Nowatzki, who is not the longest guy like Derek Barnes. This is not his natural position, but you see improvement there. You see the tenacity. And really, going back to the first time we played Chicago where he did nothing as a pass rusher, he slowly became a little bit more impactful than going to Green Bay. And it was like, wait a minute, there's a little bit here. You know, he kind of dropped his weight, created a little knockback, and I was like, all right, Trevor, you're doing a little something. And he's done that since that time. He's just, every once in a while, he's came through and he's made a play. Back to the whole strength and numbers conversation. He's just occasionally he'll get a little bit of pressure. So to me, Trevor's getting better. Not as consistent as I would like right now. He gave up the edge. He lost his gap a few times. We'll show that. But this specifically, I think, is something that should be pointed out, is to play like this where his take-on technique is much better. This would be an example of a play that worked, but needs to improve. There's a couple things. Number one, we had too many dumb flags in this last game. Too many dumb flags, and this would be one of them on the holding. Missing tackles. Now, some of this is San Francisco really good right after catch. Some of this is when Duracell gets back, hopefully that helps. But also, Jalen Reed's maybe missed 3 tackles in this game. It was his first game back. He played 40 snaps. Ben Neiman played 18. He played 40 snaps. So they leaned heavily into Jalen. I would say it was a great game from Jalen, but mainly the biggest issue was he missed 3 tackles, and this would be one of those. He was a little bit late on the play, and we're going to expand on this in a second. But missing 3 tackles. Vildor missed a key tackle. That turned into a big game for George Kittle. This is one of those teams that you can't miss tackles that consistently because that's where they thrive, is run after catch. So it was a bad combination of you're missing tackles, and that's where they're at their best. It was a bad combination. Then again, Trevor kind of losing his gap a couple of times ties it all together. But a play like this is where you create the negative. And you can see this is the same approach defensively, right? It's an aggressive, everybody's stepping down against the run of the play fake. It's cover 3 once again. Kirby takes away the over route. It's covered up. And then the linebackers do a pretty nice job, right? They take away the chip flat, but it's called a hold because of Muhammad just held it too long. That allowed Ben Neiman to get over, and then Jack Campbell dropped out. If he doesn't hold that long, there's no flag. And this ultimately took off a Pat O'Connor sack. It took off a sack. So this would have been a negative to start things, but he held too long and he get called for a flag. It's a dumb penalty, but it's the same approach, and that would have been huge because it would have put him behind the chains. And constantly we couldn't get them behind the chains in the first half, and that's the reason for it, is dumb penalties just like that. What's also something that is working for the Lions and that they can rely on into the playoffs? This has been all season. It's Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell works. Now, the combination of Jack and Alex, which we're going to talk about more here in a second, that's what's intriguing, right? Getting those guys back together, because right now, Jack is playing at a super high level. And again, even on a play like this, you could see the aggression towards stopping the run. Just look at the Lions front here. They're playing a 1 technique, which they don't typically do, and they're playing a 3 technique on the play. And then up front, they're going to end up slanting into the A gap. So they're going to slant the 3 technique into the A gap. That allows allows Jack Campbell to scrape over top, but they're slanting, they're kicking their front. They're going A gap, they're going to step in Pat O'Connor to the B gap for Muhammad, and then they're going to ask Jack Campbell to scrape back over top and make the stop into the C gap, and he does that. But this was an example of how aggressive the Lions were really playing it. Constantly you're seeing a safety roll down into the box. That's something I also talked about in the pregame. I was like, hey, look, if you do that, you become a little bit more predictable in what you're running, which is why I think when they went to man coverage, even though it was predictable, the Lions can be better in man because zone just has windows. So if you're playing cover 3 and you have a single high safety and you're putting that safety in the box constantly and there's not a lot of like trickery out of it, there can be windows there. If you're playing cover 1, even if they know you're in cover 1, there's not always a window. So the Lions did a couple of like creative, hey, we're going to drop out, go 2 deep safeties. And they had that a couple times and it worked. But do I hate that game plan? No. Like this is one of those things where it's like, people will get on Aaron Glenn for this game, and that happens, but I won't, right? Because I have to be fair. I thought coming in, this was the strategy against San Fran. I think Aaron Glenn, a lot of ways, thought the exact same thing, and it backfired. Credit to San Fran. That's a heck of an offensive mind. It's been a bad year, but my goodness, that is an offensive mind over there that knows what he's doing. And he put us in some bad spots because of that. But this is not a bad plan to me. Did it work? Maybe it was a bad plan, right? But this is what I thought coming in they should do. So I'm not going to, backpedal on that. They did the same thing. They put a safety in the box. They were aggressive to play the run. And in the case like this, Jack Campbell gets in there. He makes a stop. And Jack Campbell's been playing at a level where you can see the number. He has 42 run stops this year. He had 1 in this last game. He had 25 all last year. He's graded as an 80 against the run according to PFF this season. We've already done a video once of Jack Campbell. He's been outstanding all season long, especially against the run. And then we get to the missed tackle issue. Now, to me, this is a bigger issue. Not even a bigger issue, but there's more to this than just missed tackle here by Jalen because it was a tough spot to make a tackle. But what's key here is this. Notice how on this screen setup that they switched. The linebacker switched Jalen and they switched with Campbell. This is what they did well. Not only did they use Debo as kind of a decoy and it would pull our backers and then they'd work behind it, but they also utilized fast motion constantly from the tight end position, and that would pull everybody, and we'll see on the Pittman play. But you see here, when they're in man and they switch it off, Jalen is just a little bit late to pass off between the running back and the tight end. So by the time he switches to the back, he's behind on the play, and then he has to race over top to stop the screen, and man, where you're the only guy responsible for that guy. So if you don't make that play, it's a big play. And him being a tick late to see it and get over top leads to the missed tackle, and now it's a big gain rather than what should have been shut. It wasn't even a big gain, it was like 5 yards. But what should have been shut down in 3rd and long, now it's like 3rd and 4. Because of that, just hesitancy. And that's where you get to the aspect of getting Duracell back, because right now Jack Campbell's playing fast in these spots. But this is where getting a guy like Alex back is where you hope that plays even faster. Now, I don't hate what Jalen did in this game, right? And I thought that I liked his decisiveness because as the game went on, the Lions made that tweak where it's like, hey, we're switching everything, like in this example, and then if your guy doesn't release, just blitz the quarterback, right? Even if it's not a called blitz, just go get the quarterback. And there was even a time in this game where the tight end kind of chipped and then worked out and he was uncovered because Jalen just took off. But he didn't throw it there, and I didn't hate it because it was a very decisive game plan, and Jalen will be decisive. So I like Jalen, right? I think the Lions like Jalen is the reason they gave him a ton of snaps, but it also points to what they feel about that position to this point. They need to get improvement there, and that's why there's been Quan. That's why David Long's been in there. That's why Ben Neiman's played snap. Then as soon as Jalen comes back, he takes 40 snaps. Because they need improvement there. But that's where you get Alex back. You're hoping that you get that pillar and you know exactly what you're going to get. And things like this become faster because this is where Alex typically shines. Not even to mention his ability to match up just in coverage alone because he's probably our best piece in that spot. Back to the aggressive nature here. So this is what I was talking about. Notice how on this play, the fast motion with the tight end tied along with Debo on the fake pitch, everybody's flowing. But the key I point is Anthony Pittman, because even though everybody flows on the front side, I focus on the back side of Anthony Pittman, because we saw in the first play where Iffy got out and he still got out into the slant play on the backside. Pittman doesn't do that. Pittman played 4 snaps, all right? And you're trying to figure out what that's going to look like. And with an aggressive approach defensively, he's not in any kind of position to make this play on the over route. So he's uncovered. And again, this was a result of them doing a really good job using it as a decoy and then attacking how we approach the game, right? And you have that over route that takes Kirby Joseph and you take the corner out of the play and you kind of just sneak him over the middle, and you don't have a body for that unless you're not playing that aggressive against the run. But the Lions were trying to say, we're taking that away. And we saw in this game that, hey, San Fran had a good response for that. And here would be another example. I didn't think Ben even played poorly. He played 18 snaps, thought he played pretty well. But again, this comes back to where Alex Anzalone instinctually, you hope that you get some of these plays that are just above and beyond. It's like doing more than what's expected. And to me, this is an example of that, right? Like you go at Pat O'Connor on a play like this, and everybody kind of fills their gap. Pat O'Connor, I think, does a nice job on this play. And then Jack Campbell steps down. It's a really good block here by George Kittle to pick up Jack Campbell and not allow him to make the stop. But Ben Niemann is filling the A gap, which is his gap. The problem is he doesn't get over top quick enough to shut this play down before it gets 9 yards and the running back's getting downhill. That's where, again, instinctually, where if you get a guy like Alex back, potentially this helps you because in a spot like this, he may feel that, hey, our defensive line with Reader, like there's a mess there. I don't need to continue to fill. Once Reader pushes the center into the other gap, there's no need for me to continue to fill. Find the back, scrape over top, and go make a play on the ball carrier. Like go beyond what you're expected in this play. In this case, I think he just plays his gap too long, and it turns into a 9-yard gain. So there's no guarantee that's going to fix with Alex, but you have more confidence that maybe he goes above and beyond what's expected at times versus what you have now. And that's no shot at Ben Niemann, but I like how Ben Niemann's played. But that's where maybe you get a little bit more. This comes back to the whole defensive line point. First off, shout out to Miles Adams. Big fan of Miles Adams. I'm glad he continues to get snaps, and I feel good about him going into playoffs as a rotational piece as well. But then DJ Reader, I focus here. How about Pat O'Connor? And then once again, Jack Campbell making the play against the run. That's been consistent. Now we get into the back end, because this is something I've been saying, and I said that I think that the back end objectively is better than it was last year in the playoffs. I think it is. I think it's hard to argue that it's not. Cam Sutton and Kendall Vilder were our wide corners last year with Branch in the slot and Iffy and Kirby at safety. That was our secondary in the playoffs last year against the Niners. This year, it's Terrion out wide and it's Amik out wide, even without Carlton, and the other three are the same. I think that this year's is better than that. But you still have a young corner in Terrion. And I think the Terrion situation needs nuance to it, because I think Terrion has been better in true one-on-one spots. He's not perfect. He has gotten beat. We've seen that. But I thought with the way that San Fran beat Terrion was so much tied to motion. It was motion, it was out-leveraged on the play, and it was setting himself up for success. But I didn't think in true one-on-one spots he was bad in coverage. I just thought they did a really nice job in motion by putting him into bad spots. And that's why ultimately we saw Terrion get taken out and then put back into the game because of that reason. He's a young corner. But the positive for Terrion Flip is this. He's gotten better in some of the little things. Number one, I think he's plastered receivers a lot better on broken plays, which was a disaster against the Bills. He was terrible there against the Bills, but I think since that time, he's been better in that spot. He's plastered receivers. He's more aware when a play breaks down. I also think that he's slowly getting better in true one-on-one spots. Plus, we play Minnesota this weekend, which was arguably his best game that he's played. Now, it's a little bit different without Carlton, but that's arguably the best game he's played all year. And even in a game like this where statistically it doesn't look good, I didn't think he played horribly. I just thought that it was more so about you're a young corner and he just doesn't have some of maybe that awareness and feel for how the defense is attacking you. And San Fran did a really nice job of exposing that. Now, this is a learning opportunity, and that's what it's going to be for a very young corner that hasn't played outside corner for a long time, where this is going to be a work in progress over time for Terrion. But the skill set's still there, and I think we're seeing that in true one-on-one spots. But in a play like this, utilizing the motion, quickly snapping after the motion across, and he doesn't create the spacing between him and Branch with the depth when they bunch it up, so he ends up running right into Branch and it leads to a big play. That's not necessarily that Terrion can't cover. That's that Terrion didn't have the awareness to give himself a little bit more room, and he allowed himself to essentially get picked on the play because once the motion came across, he just stopped worrying about what else was going around him, and because of that, he didn't have the proper depth. He gets picked off on the route, and it turns into a 40-yard gain, and this was a 3rd and 7. It was after 2 good run stops. If he shut down the run, they shut down the run for a 1-yard gain. If he lit the guy up, we should have got off the field here, but it turns into a 40-yard gain, not because of anything special, not because we couldn't cover him. It's because you have a young corner that Sanford did a really nice job putting in that kind of position where he had to feel everything that was going on, and for a guy that hasn't had that many snaps there still, that's a work in progress. Sanford had some good beaters, and this would be a good one. It was a good cover 3 one before half. They delivered it over our backer. That's where I would like to see Jalen Rees-Maybin carry that route, right? If you're the flat defender in the cover 3 and you don't see another underneath threat in your play, I don't have an issue with carrying that guy that becomes the number 1 receiver up vertically, right? Because on this play, the concept is pull the outside corner and there's no help over top. So that happens. That's just a straight coverage beater. But then you go to the second half, and this is where I point to what we've talked about all year. I don't want to go down this whole rabbit hole if we have the best safety duo, because I believe we do, but we know that. However, it's the specific actions by Kirby, which I think is promising. Kirby's been awesome all year. And I think even in this game, you can point out a really bad, but also the ability to adjust from it and learn from it. So we had the interceptions, but watch a play like this, right? This is the first big play that they connect on, really on Kirby Joe. This is the big play they connect on. And this is kind of a half roll to it, right? You're back in that cover 3 defense, still linebackers all pressing upfield aggressively. So they're putting the stress on their back end. And that's where the mesh needs to be. If you're going to ask your backers to play aggressively downhill, then your safety can't be conservative and allowing that second level to open up because there's nobody in the middle of the field. And as we talked about in the preview, that's where they're going to live. I said in the preview, I want aggressive safety play, like step down, take away the second level. This is the opposite of that. This is take away the third level, which makes no sense. Let them throw that pass because Amik is even in good coverage here. Take away the second level. And for Kirby to get beat on this once and come back and say, you know what, that's not happening again. I'm going to take the football away. That's growth. That's huge. And that's an in-game tweak by himself. Maybe someone got in his ear. Maybe he just recognized it, but it was a great adjustment, and we can give credit to that because here he's watching Purdy's eyes. I think Purdy fooled him. It's a long, drawn-out route that pushes into a dig route here. It's not kind of like you're over where it's kind of easy to tell what's happening. It's a dig route, so very last second, then Kirby would have to make that decision. He bails out too far. They hit the big dig route. Purdy uses his eyes well, kind of half rolls, goes across the field, and Kirby just gave up a massive play there. But it's the same approach, but it's the adjustment that's everything there. And then again, missing tackles. This was Vildor's key miss out in the flat on Kittle, big miss. This is the area where you talk about, okay, what needs to be better? Trevor Nowaski in this spot, and again, we're mixing Pittman in, but honestly, it's probably going to be Trevor Nowaski going forward. We just need to see him make these tweaks because he's getting better. He's getting more pressure. He's taking on blocks a little bit better, but this one of those cases where it's like, hey, you're late, and it's the team that's going to get wide on you, and he loses his gap. He doesn't get over top, so now all of a sudden him getting pinned inside leads to this touchdown run for Debo, and that just can't happen because even on one-on-one, it's tough to bring down Debo, and he allows that to happen. As we say, what works, we know we love our safety position. And luckily, we don't have to deal with George Kittle again because he's ridiculous. But even that being said, some of these plays, you can just tip your cap to the other team and be like, hey, George Kittle just won. But I do think that the Lions need to be better with Ife Melifonwu. He needs to be better. I think Ife Melifonwu, we need more improvement man-to-man coverage. And unfortunately, it may be too late. He's missed so much time. It kind of stinks. He hasn't been able to grow. And who knows what that's going to look like. But I would say one of the big concerns, because of a limited amount of playing time this season, because of the time missed to injury, is what is he going to look like when he's in these one-on-one spots? Now, in this case, it's Brian Branch. And Branch has gotten beaten too, right? I think we need more production out of the slot from him, but I still have no issue with Branch. I'm really not concerned. Even when he gives up receptions like the touchdown, he was all over, dude, and Ricky Pearsall, like averages, like it's going to start to work our direction here. They just made some great catches, and overall, I'm not worried about Branch. It's more so about Iffy because of the separation that he will give up one-on-one, and we're going to have to see how much that can grow by the time we get to the playoffs, and hopefully it does. Hopefully it continues to get better and better because he does the other things well. He hits, he blitzes his butt off, he does a lot of things well, but that is still a work in progress, and I just wish he would have had more time to kind of develop that aspect. Lions in the second half, making an adjustment. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to play man coverage. And that ultimately shut down some drives because they made them constantly beat them with tight window throws. And again, tight window throws that we talked about in the preview, I said, hey, you want to make them make tight window throws because it's just not the same. It's inconsistent. There was a ton of pass breakups. We got our picks off of it. But it doesn't mean you have to play man to force tight window throws because they found success against man too. They recognized it. They got big plays out of it, right? They found beaters for it. The big thing here was just the adjustment in general. We're going to crank the aggression, right? We're going to speed this up, but we're going to crank the aggression through blitzing rather than just always our linebacker stepping and getting upfield. Because even in those spots where we're not blitzing, if every linebacker is stepping hard into their gaps and then they're bailing, you have no second level support. But then you're also not blitzing. So instead, I like the adjustment of, hey, we're actually going into a pure blitz, so you don't have to step so aggressively into your gap because there's someone already blitzing on the play. We're going to fill the gaps regardless. That way you can keep some depth over the middle of the field. Or in this case, let's just play straight man coverage. And you also have to give credit to the fact that the two deep coverage worked pretty well. Like the adjustments there as well, especially on first down. To show single high, bail out of it a couple times. This is a great example of Terrion Arnold on the plaster here. I love that. The contain's pretty good here from Muhammad. Linebacker goes aggressively. This is an adjustment. This is better weeks over weeks where this started against Buffalo and it was exposed. Every week since, I feel like it's gotten better. Plastering receivers downfield, Terrion good recognition, and closing with that free off-ball linebacker that just closes on the play and eats up airspace. This is good across the board because that's how you contain mobility is everybody, not just the front four, and this would be a good example of that. And then again, continuing to make San Fran work tight window throws and man coverage, we still have dudes that can cover. We got dudes that can cover, and this would be an example of it. Here's the pass breakup, Kyle Juszczyk on Brian Branch, and I'm so glad that they went to this. Here's another one, cover one blitz. Again, it's straightforward. We're blitzing, we're going to speed you up, and we're playing man coverage. You might know what we're in, but you got to beat us. And if you're not getting beat with the motion pre-snap, and we're not allowing these rub routes, and we're being smart with the spacing, the Lions showed that they can definitely cover. So if you talk about what's working for the Lions heading into the playoffs, Amik Robertson is working for the Lions. Amik Robertson in his 2 games playing wide corner has allowed 4 receptions on 9 targets and 3 pass breakups. That is incredible. He's been great all season, but he's been great out wide, and it showed up again in this game. Again, I'm high on Terrion. I think he's getting better in true one-on-one one-on-one spots. We just have to be, he has to be more aware of his surrounding at times. And we go back to the Minnesota game where I talked about that, right? Route development, expectations there, top of the route. He's gotten better there. Like, I haven't talked about that since that time. And route might be breaking here. And then having a little more anticipation, off-man coverage, more anticipation. So I think he's getting better. It's just like there's a process to it, and they went at him a little bit in this game. This kind of thing, like Levi getting pressure on a play like this, again, this is where Levi has to shine. It's the backup offensive line. Go win. Levi found a way to win. Pretty straightforward. Cover 3 blitz this time. So again, it's not like, hey, we all have to step aggressively upfield. We're just going to blitz. Cover 3 blitz. You get pressure between Jalen. They don't pick it up on the outside. Branch does what Branch does. Talking about the safety duo, that's something that we can buy into heading into the playoffs. Jumps kind of the outcut. Nothing there. We end up getting a sack. So I like the adjustments we made in the second half. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. We see here on this big play that they hit Brian Branch with. It's a long developing route. They essentially just take the quarterback out of the pocket so that the blitzing, or even in this case, we don't even blitz, but the idea of blitzing kind of minimized a little bit. The Lions went to a lot more two-man concepts, so it allowed them to press and keep 2 deep safeties. That was great for the most part. It worked really well. A case like this, not as much, right? One safety rolls down a little bit. The other safety kind of plays the deep middle, kind of a cover 1 robber look, and they end up breaking it across the field. It plays too long developing. We get beat on the play. So there's beaters to everything, but in general, the results were much more consistent. And then we wrap it with kind of Kirby Joseph again. It's an in-game tweak. He's playing the same cover 3 as earlier. Linebackers are still aggressive upfield, just like earlier. Jack Campbell's a little bit more aware here, and I love that. But everybody's still aggressive, but the difference is Kirby doesn't give depth. He's planted. He's the post safety, and he's deep on the play, right? He's about 16-yard depth, but he doesn't backpedal at all. He just plants, he reads the quarterback's eyes, and he jumps the route. He's anticipating the second-level throw. And this is kind of the in-game adjustments that you have to have from guys at this level. A lot of things that we can believe in. What works for the Lions? The defensive line is showing a lot more consistency. That works with what we have because we know who we have there, and that just is going to be what it is. So what has to step up? Well, Levi has to step up. DJ Reader needs to be that guy, and I think he's been going that direction. And we need the linebacker play to be really good. And Jack Campbell's helped us a ton there because he's been much better as a block shed, getting off blocks, doing more than what's actually there. He had a couple of those in this game as well. Alex Anzalone potentially getting back to give us more instinctual, fast plays, hopefully less missed tackles as well. But Pat O'Connor, like there's a rotation of consistency there, which is huge. The defensive backs, the adjustments schematically, Kirby Joseph in-game adjustments. That guy is a football player, man. He is a smart football player, and in this game kind of showed it off. And the Lions still have true talent out wide. They have absolute talent at cornerback, and I still think it's one of the best units that are going to hit the playoffs because they're very well-rounded. They don't have just guys that you can pick on straight up in true one-on-one spots, but they can pick on Terriot, as we saw in this game, by movement and confusing him in awareness situations and creating these rub routes. That can be an issue, but that's just another thing he'll have to add to his list of like, okay, we got to improve here. But in true one-on-one spots, I trust him. And if we just go from the personnel perspective, to me, the second level, Trevor Nowaski, we got areas to improve. But the second level with Alex and Jack, it's going to be, to me, arguably better than it was last year because Jack's better than he was last year. The secondary, better than it was last year in the playoffs. And the defensive line, it is what it is, but it's playing at least at a pretty consistent, stable rate. It's not great. It's not elite. And that's why I always say it comes back to strength and numbers. Iffy's ability to blitz, Branch's ability to blitz. The Lions are going to have to lean on that. They're going to have to lean on aggression. They're going to have to lean on smart play. And they're going to have to lean on guys being able to tweak in game. Kirby being able to see things and anticipate it. Alex Anzalone going above and beyond his gap to go make a play because the defensive line maybe doesn't win that time. We're going to have guys at all 3 levels that can instinctually play beyond what's expected of them, that way we can occasionally make some of these plays that flip games because we're not going to shut teams out. It just is what it is. But can we get that? And right now, I think with Alex back and the way that Jack's been playing this season from a consistencies perspective, how much that he's overcompensated against the run, if you get Alex back and he could add some more of those instinctual plays and coverage and against the run and he's just aggressive, yeah, you're going to have some blunders because of that. You're going to have some mistakes. But if he adds you a couple of plays that are just above and beyond, and Kirby's doing that right now, Branch has always done that, but Kirby's doing that right now, now you're in a spot where it's like, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but we have guys that can make up for some of the issues that are going to be there. And then when you talk about what must improve, missing tackles, that's got to be better. Playing faster at the linebacker position. Hopefully that's with Alex. Hopefully Alex helps us a lot there. We just need some growth from these guys that maybe haven't had a ton of snaps, right? Iffy Melifonwu this season. Terrion Arnold, who I think has consistently shown that he's getting better, so I'm positive there. I still want to see more out of Iffy in terms of just straight man-to-man coverage spots, but we know what he does well, and he's another of those guys that can go above and beyond, make a guy miss, create a sack that you didn't expect because he can just do those types of things. He's kind of a freak in that way. I mean, in this last game, he allowed 3 receptions on 3 targets for 32 yards, so I want to see them be better, but good thing is we don't have to deal with Kittle. And Brian Branch, I want a little bit more production from the slot, go a little bit above and beyond. He's a great coverage player, but we need him to get back to making a play, making a turnover, forcing something. I'm not really worried about him, though. It's not like he's in a lull. He just hasn't had those kind of bounces way. But I'm not really worried about Branch because he's typically still in a great position. So for me, this defense, while it has issues like every team does, and they're going to have to just deal with some of these, it's not like a defense that literally can't do anything. This was a smart offense that made adjustments, and they had a really good plan for us in that game. But I still do believe that this defense has more than enough to get to where they want to go. It's just they need some guys to kind of overplay beyond expectations a few times, and they need continued growth. But with this coaching staff, as I always say, I'll leave it there. This coaching staff, to me, will give us a chance in any game that we go into because they're that good. I believe that. I truly do. And we'll see how it plays out. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.